to the first Financial Fox Crypto Debate. I'm Stefania Bravaglio, founder of Cassiopeia Services, and it's Financial Focus TV channel where we are at the moment, Financial Fox. It's my pleasure to be the host and the moderator for tonight's discussion, where we will be talking about Facebook new currency Libra, but also about blockchain with a panel of successful industry experts. I'm very excited to introduce you to our panelists. Our first guest is Jared Tate, founder of Digibyte Blockchain.
Nice to meet everybody. I've talked with Bill before and Steffi, but nice to meet you other two gentlemen. My name is Jared Tate. I've been in the space for about 7 years now. Started work on Digibyte in 2013, launched it in 2014, and just have been going down the rabbit hole ever since.
Then we have Mr. Ajit Khurana, ex-CEO of India crypto exchange ZebPay and now CEO of crypto exchange ZebPay Singapore.
So I was CEO of ZebPay India. Now I'm CEO of the global holding company, and we operate ZebPay as an exchange out of Malta and another exchange out of Australia. We service the world out of Malta, but our Australia exchange is a domestic exchange. Not much else to say.
Bill Barhait is our third panelist. Bill is a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of payment experience. He is the founder of Abra.
Most of you probably know me as CEO of Abra, which is a crypto wallet and exchange platform based here in Silicon Valley. We operate in dozens of countries, probably have users in close to over 100 countries now, actually. And we support the ability to buy, sell, hold, exchange across dozens of cryptocurrencies, as well as outside the US now, equities and ETFs as well. We'll be expanding into more investment products through the Abra wallets. Our entire platform is based upon smart contract technology using Bitcoin. And I believe we run the only such kind of system in the world, probably the most successful consumer-facing smart contract system in the world right now.
And finally, we have Jean-Philippe Baudet, I'll just call it GP, Director and CTO of Canadian company Zio Crypto Networks, with focus on building profitable blockchain structures for businesses.
Very, very simply, I'm a self-taught person, and so I did not attend to any computer science group or study in my life at all. So I was a video game developer, and when I was approached by my first startup who asked to me if I could code for them. So code was a very vague and abstract thing for me at that point. So I didn't knew that machine learning would get that complex. And so this is how I entered into the technology world. And I was a basic developer, and suddenly I became a machine learning developer. And we were treating about language, natural language processing, and working on a question answering system way before Alexa and all those things. So I come from this background. I've been approached by the blockchain technology quite by mistake, by having a free office in this consortium of people at the Bitcoin Embassy in Montreal. So it was in 2013, relatively early. And at that point, I just fell in love with the concept. So this is where I come from. I've been working on quite a few companies since then. Since the last 8 years, I've helped found 3 companies. One that is in the top 100 AI company in England that is called Concord. And now I'm working on my own project, and I'm also CTO at Zio Crypto Network. So that's me.
Thank you very much to my guest to be part of the event, and we will be discussing Facebook new cryptocurrency. I have got a great panel of successful industry experts, so the discussion will be various. So I will just throw some questions, and I would like to introduce the first guest, Jared Tate, the founder of Digibyte Blockchain. Then we have Ajit Khurana, CEO of the Indian crypto exchange ZebPay. Bill Barhait, a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of payment experience and co-founder of Abra. And then finally, we have Jean-Philippe Baudet, Director and CTO of Canadian company ZU Crypto Networks. Thank you very much, guys, for being on the show.
Thanks for having us, Steffi.
Thank you.
A pleasure to be here.
So, I mean, we saw last month the announcement of Facebook launching its own global cryptocurrency. I would like to see what was your reaction. Jared, maybe you want to start, because obviously, you know, Libra is kind of a very different cryptocurrency to many decentralized projects outside there. So do you think that could actually work?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to look at everything from the 30,000 foot perspective, especially on the global macroeconomics level. And to me, you know, outside of being the creator of a decentralized blockchain, what it means is we've had some pretty significant validation of this technology and basically the future of where finance and crypto technology is going. Do I agree with the way that they're going about it? No, but at the same time, I think it does stand a chance of being successful. I mean, if you really look at Facebook, you know, with over 2 billion users, it's larger than any country on the planet. And if they're able to basically tap directly into everybody's wallet and you know, handle their financial transactions with a quote unquote cryptocurrency, I think it is a very significant move forward. I think the biggest thing that it's doing is it's really sending a lot of waves through political powers, you know, at the highest levels of various governments around the country, around the world. So I think it is a very big awakening moment. And I think we'll look back in history at this point as a very pivotal point in the evolution and maturity of this technology.
Thanks. Bill, what are your views on that?
Yeah, a few things, right? I think one of Bitcoin's biggest advantages in the way it was initially deployed was that when Satoshi mined the Genesis block, nobody knew they were doing it, right? They were able to do it in a way where it was completely off the grid. And it was probably weeks or months later that anybody even knew that this initial kind of block of digital currency was out there. And that allowed that group, or he, she, or they, whoever it was, to basically operate under the radar screen, fix bugs, you know, get the software out in a few people's hands, like Hal Finney and others, who could basically give feedback and iterate on the software before really anybody even understood what they were doing. And they weren't worried about the price of a Bitcoin or who was going to shop with it or regulatory oversight. They were paranoid from a personal security perspective, which in hindsight was probably appropriate, but they didn't have to worry about all of this government kind of coming at them at the same time, different perspectives, right? And then I guess if you look at a kind of a spectrum, the middle spectrum would be Ethereum, which basically kind of did this ICO, which by today's standards, now that we understand this better, was probably a security offering at the time. But as it evolved, governments would probably say, okay, it's sufficiently decentralized, whatever the hell that means, to say that it's not a security now. But if you were doing that initial coin offering today for Ethereum, you'd probably have to register and do things that are similar to what the Libra Foundation is actually doing. And then you go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is where Libra is now. Everybody knows they're doing it. There's lots of companies involved. The focus is on getting billions of users to use it quickly, which is why they're doing this in the first place. They looked very hard at Bitcoin. I know I've discussed it with them. And we're simply afraid that it wouldn't scale to deal with P2P payments in the short term. No decentralized cryptocurrency would today, in their opinion. Okay, so that's why they're doing this the way they're doing. And so to Jared's point, it could work. I actually consider this the big kind of beta test until it's truly permissionless and you don't have to pay to join. And I think they will get there over time. I kind of look at it like Gmail, right? They called Gmail beta software for, I think, like 6 or 7 years. And then they eventually took the beta moniker off. I look at this as a big beta test for a few years to basically say, okay, can we evolve this to be a true BFT blockchain a la Bitcoin and have anyone be able to join, just like anyone can be a node on the Digibyte network today or any of the other sufficiently decentralized systems. But then I think they're going to get back to the same challenge, which is how do we scale if we have 500 million people trying to do 50-cent payments at the same time? I don't think they're going to be any better off than anyone else. So I think that they're basically taking on this harder challenge for the reasons I described on that spectrum. But once they get there, I'm not convinced that on-chain solutions will be able to scale to meet the kind of solution they're going after. But then you end up back in a model, which is the Libra part of this, which is what Facebook is doing inside of Facebook, right? Because Libra is not owned by Facebook, it's a nonprofit. That will actually be off-chain payments, which is no different than what Coinbase does or any exchange or any hosted wallet, right? And so at that point, I don't know what the advantage is of trusting Facebook versus trusting a bank, because the legal oversight is exactly the same, either as an MSB, a money service business, or a money transmitter, or e-money license holder in Europe, or a straight up bank, per Trump's comments last week. So they're going to basically back into all of the same problems that the Gen 1 cryptocurrency Bitcoin industry has been facing, to say, how can we use Bitcoin not only as digital gold, but also as a payment network? And there's great hope that Lightning, which is a layer 2 solution, will get us there. But if you get a layer 3, which is like hosted services, you're no different than a bank at that point. And so I think that that's the evolution that we're going to see. But I do applaud Facebook and the creative companies they've put together for actually even trying this. I think it's very bold. I think it's very risky. I really applaud David Marcus and Morgan Beller and the other people and Kevin and the people at Facebook that are even trying this, putting themselves out there. But I think they've got a lot of challenges ahead that they have to deal with.
And do you think that this initiative from Facebook will lead other big tech company, other banks, for example, to start their own cryptocurrency?
I think, yes. I think that in some ways, I think it was JP Morgan talked about their coin. You have Libra now. I think you're going to see lots of companies trying to use decentralized networks in some way, or what they call decentralized, but probably aren't. It's all going to be permissioned, a la, Ripple and other services. There's nothing wrong with that. Just call it what it is. But I think you're going to see lots of companies getting on the bandwagon and trying lots of different things. I question what real world problems they're going to be solving in the short term. But look, it's all software. The more people that are developing software, eventually interesting things are going to happen. That's good. But I suspect a lot of it will be 1999 pets.com nonsense, which will also go away, which is also fine. I mean, a lot of innovation is for the wastebaskets. But yes, to your question, I expect to see every major company trying to figure out their crypto strategy at some point, just like everybody had to figure out their .com strategy in 1997.
GP, I wanted to ask you about what you think is the major concern for Facebook cryptocurrency.
Well, as it's been added before, Facebook is essentially starting by being a platform on which people exchange data and story. Their business model is really, really based on how much they know about you. So my real concern with this, quotes, open quotes, cryptocurrency is the data play behind it. So you have a centralized operation that says that they are doing a blockchain that will create the money for everyone that you're going to be able to spend on Facebook Marketplace and everywhere around the world. There is no limit on the type of data that they will gain with this, and there is absolutely no guarantee about privacy. When you read their white paper, they will say that they have privacy at heart and that they will try to do their best. But as a permission type of blockchain, they have the full censorship power to decide what goes on and what doesn't. So it gives them a new censorship power that they already have, backed now by money that people will need. Because if you take it, people are unbanked. There's billions of people unbanked around the world, and they're going to tackle a real challenge that has already been started. Everyone said, oh, cryptocurrency will defy the banks. Well, sorry, but it has not of yet. But I think that Facebook is like the first major attempt at doing this. So then we have now an empowered and data empowered bank that will be able to censor our ability to have opinions and to spend money. So this is my biggest concern.
Okay, Ajit, over to you. Let's discuss about obviously the opportunity in developing nation. We know Facebook user base is quite significant. They've got over 2.3 billion users, and there's obviously in a developing nation such as Africa, such as India, that could bring basically new opportunity to people. Now, in India, we see a very specific situation where the government is not proactive and encouraging cryptocurrency. What's your views?
So with the disclaimer that I'm no longer CEO of ZPay India, I'm CEO of ZPay in Singapore. But with that disclaimer, let me respond to you because I was CEO of ZPay India. So first of all, the good news. I think that whether it is Facebook's Libra, whether it is Bitcoin, or whether it is some of the projects that a lot of people on this panel are working on, every one of them has this one thing in common, that every one of them is trying to improve money as it exists. And the reason money needs improvement, and this is segueing into your question, is because for the longest time, these monopolists who create money or monetary policy have been very resistant to overcoming its limitations. That is what led to various attempts at digital currency, eventually Bitcoin, and now a decade later, Libra. Here are two facts about India that many of your viewers or panelists may not know. One, the number of people with access to internet-connected mobile devices is greater in India than the number of people who have access to toilets. Second, the number of people who use WhatsApp as a messenger in India is greater than the number of people who use email addresses. So what has happened is that the unbanked, as the previous panelist said, have actually leapfrogged across all of the technologies and facilities, technologies such as email and facilities such as banking, because the formal system kept them out. This was the great promise that cryptocurrency brought in. Now, Facebook has this huge advantage of, like everybody has acknowledged, including you, Stefania, that it already has a strong base. So if everybody has a Facebook account, gets a Libra wallet, that would be like the biggest advancement in money that humanity has ever seen. Having said that, I do not see Facebook in any way as a competition to Bitcoin, but I see, Libra as a competition to Bitcoin. I see it as a competition to fiat currency. And that is where regulators or the imperative of regulators becomes so important. Over the last year or so, we have seen the Indian establishment largely being undecided about how it wants to view cryptocurrency. And the few statements that have come out have actually been negative towards cryptocurrency. I'm not talking of the FUD that some elements of media might have created, but from the government or any of the institutions, there seems to be a fairly high degree of hesitation in giving the go-ahead. In such a scenario, if Facebook somehow is able to lead the way and convince the Indian government or any other such government that, hey, you know what, the unbanked or the marginalized communities in India will gain, that would just open the door for crypto or digital assets in general. We'll all be happy. If, however, Facebook becomes yet another monopolist and probably a scarier monopolist than existing governments, then that is not something I would like to see happen in India.
Okay.
So can I ask, I mean, I want to build on that because I'm really fascinated by your perspective on India, Ajit, because I mean, I love the people, I love the culture, but when I watch what's happening with what's supposed to be a democratic government, to me, it's horrifying, right? Because, you know, I've opined many times recently that I believe Bitcoin should be protected free speech. The Supreme Court has come out on this very clearly in the United States, in my opinion, that encrypted messaging software is protected free speech. The Indian government does not see it this way. And this is really scary to me, that I believe kind of Joe Public in India does not share my fear on this topic. And I also, I just came back from the Philippines. We have a huge user base there. And we did a meetup with over 200 people. People come from all over the country literally to meet us. They're so excited about this. And the government has had a better perspective in allowing companies like Abra to run non-custodial services with a hands-off model. But I'm really worried that even if this is what's happening in a so-called democratic country, think about real despotic governments that have complete control, like in Thailand, where the junta can basically just do whatever they want on a whim. What's going to happen here? I mean, does this get better? Does it devolve into our worst nightmare?
No, I can answer that. May I, Stefania?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing that I learned from Indian history. We do seem to be at a point in our history, or cryptocurrency history, where things look very pessimistic, as you have explained. But look back at when the public internet became available in the early 90s. Look at ISPs, internet service providers, e-commerce. Look at mobile phones, peer-to-peer lending, etc., digital wallets. Every one of these over the last 2.5 decades has met first. It has met with phenomenal regulatory resistance. But every one of the other examples that I gave you, all of which predate cryptocurrency, or at least its mass usage in India, have eventually got adapted. The government welcomes it and to some extent enables it. So to that extent, while I bleed as much as you do at this point of time, I'm extremely hopeful that it's only a matter of time where common sense prevails and this becomes something that India uses as something that helps it grow and helps and actually benefits its citizens.
Yeah, I mean, I get your point and I appreciate what you're saying, and you're probably right. It just really scares me that the idea has to be that the government welcomes it in order for us to have an open, any semblance of an open system for the country to be able to operate in. To me, the very idea that the government needs to welcome it is nonsense. And so everything should be allowed until society decides it's not allowed. And what you're saying is effectively the opposite. And that really scares me as somebody who truly believes, in liberty above all, including liberty above, AML. As somebody who follows AML rules very carefully, I have a very strong disagreement with how we apply those rules. Liberty doesn't seem to come first anymore, and certainly that's not the case in India.
So to add on to that point, I actually, after going through the documentation that's been publicly available on Libra, which for people to know, it's actually not fully open source yet, right?
Right.
Basically, they've open sourced the part that where you talk to their API. And the entire system interfaces through something they're calling admission control, which basically means if a government, say India, doesn't want certain individuals in that country to use Libra, that's where they basically can filter it.
They said they're going to do that. They very clearly have said they will not allow Libra to operate in India right now, which the fact that you can even do that, technically speaking, to your point, is kind of scary.
Yeah, and any government can do that, and they will. And that's how
they will continue to do so. I mean, cryptocurrency is always seen as a decentralization tool that will help people to get more freedom. But as a matter of fact, as you said, Bill, if we think about despotic government, cryptocurrency can become the most efficient tool of control ever made, because this is smart money and everyone needs money. At one point, this could become the 1984, as on protein. So this is really something that I admire, the freedom effort of saying we should have everything decentralized. I think that Bitcoin did what they did secretly for this reason, as you said, Bill, for security reason. But we are now in a world where we must balance somehow these requirements of being a bit regulated and not helping criminals to do things, but at the same time not enabling government to control their population. So that's going to be a great challenge, and Libra is not helping. They're just creating a more scarier and monopoly, as you mentioned before.
I think another interesting country obviously will be China. They already have WeChat, which is that they use for payment. So what do you think, maybe Jared, what do you think that will be the challenges there?
Well, I mean, first of all, Facebook, itself and WhatsApp are pretty well banned already in China. So, I mean, if history is any sort of track record, they're going to do something very similar, which they've talked about. I've been at presentations in China where they talked about, eventually creating a digital renminbi. I think the biggest thing that is very apparent to me is if Libra has this kind of power with admission control to decide who is able to send and receive and when, and then not only have the data on that, why would they ever give that power up? And I truly believe the only way that they're going to be able to launch this is if governments are able to come in and influence those decisions. I think that's the only way that they're going to be allowed to actually operate, is with this quote unquote, backdoor admission control.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see. I think that's going to be beta software for many years. And so, I actually agree with what you're saying for now, but I think that it's not a decentralized cryptocurrency until that's no longer true. And that's fine. It's just software. They can do whatever they want with their software, just like banks run core systems that are unbelievably regulated, right? So in that regard, who cares? It's just software, right? But there is a chance, and I agree with you at this point, a small chance that it truly does evolve from that beta moniker that I'm giving it to be a truly open system, which doesn't have those gatekeepers anymore. And at that point, it does become interesting, but the onus is on them to prove and put their money where their mouths are that that's really going to happen via this foundation. And we should all be skeptical until that day comes. But on the other hand, like I said, it's just software. So let's not treat it any differently than any other software from a regulatory perspective, and see what happens.
Well, it's a very pious vow to say that they want to make it permissionless, but I don't think that the government will let that happen. Sorry, IG.
But talking about regulation, I think, Donald Trump made a statement about Libra, and he said, okay, if they want to become a payment provider, then they should be regulated like banks. Do you agree with that, Bill? Do you think there was, what do you think about Donald Trump's statement?
So a few things, right? It's very unlikely that Donald Trump wrote that tweet himself. He doesn't, there's no way that he's dug into the nuances of Bitcoin to understand what's going on, or Libra to understand what's going on. If he did, he would have basically not even wrote it, because Libra itself is a foundation in Switzerland, which is not owned by Facebook. So Facebook, I believe, also has MT licenses across U.S. states and is registered with FinCEN. And so I don't know about their e-money status or licensing in Europe. I wouldn't be surprised if they have an e-money license in Europe, going back to their old days of having the Facebook credit system. So this is a company that's been operating in the financial services world for a while already, and has a lot of experience in that world. So I think that if Calibra, as a company that is going to be managing people's crypto, I would guess not just Libra, but at some point other cryptocurrencies, they're already operating as an MSB, and they know how to do that. David Marcus used to run one of the largest MSBs in the world in PayPal, right? He knows infinitely more about this topic than Donald Trump does. So I think that he got some bad advice from advisors in crafting that tweet. And I think that given that he kind of represents his version of the kind of alt-right, whatever that means, those are people who would naturally have a high affinity to the crypto world. And I'm very surprised that he would would have done that. But it is what it is. He's very volatile. So, but in that regard, I don't put much credence in the statements as they relate to Libra, because it just showed a complete lack of understanding of the details of what's going on behind the scenes.
If we dig a little bit more into the regulation aspect, Jared, what do you think people will be looking to see in order to give the green light to Facebook?
So I'm probably going to get crucified for saying this, but I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding, not only in the regulatory world, but across the board, on how various crypto projects actually function. To me, when you look at Bitcoin or Digibyte, they're mathematically scarce because of the consensus of the protocol assets, and they function better as a store of value than they do as a daily transactional currency. And to highlight on Bill's earlier point, I don't think there's a single blockchain out there that will ever be able to scale and handle every micro transaction on the planet. However, the truly decentralized projects that are out there that are mathematically limited really cannot be compared to these fiat currencies. And so how I understand Libra is going to function is it's going to be a pegged, stable coin to a basket of world currencies, similar to how the special drawing rights function. So I think, there needs to be a differentiation from a regulator's perspective on how a daily transactional, quote unquote, stable coin operates versus a truly decentralized digital asset, like Bitcoin or Digibyte. Because not only is there the ability as a store of value, because, on one end you have something that's limited and scarce, and on the other hand, you have fiat currencies like the US dollar that are completely inflationary, and there's billions, trillions more printed, every year. So you can't really compare the two. They just don't function in the same world. And not to mention, there's a lot more use cases for decentralized projects from a cybersecurity perspective, whether it's, logging in, replacing passwords, or storing and securing legal contracts, healthcare records, a whole number of different things. And I feel like a lot of times there's this regulatory approach from various countries where they're trying to fit, a square peg in a round hole, and it just doesn't function and work that way in reality.
On that point on security, Bill, do you want maybe to share your views, what you think will be obviously the security challenges for Libra? For instance, let's say the Calibra wallet is going to be hacked. How do you think they are thinking to handle that?
Sure. There's a couple of issues that we need to think about here, right? So there's the hosting via Facebook subsidiary Calibra of keys or crypto stored value. Then there's the smart contract system. They're actually developing an entirely new programming language, vis-a-vis Ethereum Solidity for this project. And that in and of itself, and I believe it's meant to be quasi-Turing complete to the same extent that Solidity is. And that in and of itself is a massive security challenge. Once you develop smart contracts that can effectively do anything, that's where a lot of the issues with Ethereum have come from, because developing wallets and Web3 apps that use that is actually very complex, very hard to debug. And a lot of the issues they've had have been in poor wallet implementations. That's been a provably difficult issue to deal with from the get-go. And they're going to have infinitely more developers trying to hack this thing and basically steal money with wallet implementations, and people coming at them from every direction in that regard. Then just in terms of managing people's crypto, Calibra is going to have a massive challenge. I believe that if Calibra wanted to develop a non-custodial wallet, that they couldn't convince a single lawyer in Facebook to do it. I think they would have no chance of developing a system that says if you lose your phone, you lose your money if you don't have a backup phrase. There's no way they would get away with that. So they're going to have to manage the keys themselves. And that means that every hacker in the world, the eye of Mordor is going to be 100% focused on Calibra. Because the reason that Libra is so interesting, why are we even having this conversation in the first place? It's not because they created this great foundation in Switzerland to do great things. It's because WhatsApp and Instagram have 2 billion users. If they didn't, we wouldn't care, right? That's what's interesting about this, is they have 2 billion users. So that means by definition, the entire planet of hackers is going to be completely focused on trying to hack Calibra and basically make that thing a pile of, garbage heap from day one by showing how hackable it is. And so, look, every system in the world to some degree, that's on the internet is probably hackable. The only reason that we don't hear about Dropbox hacks or box hacks or G Drive hacks all the time is there's probably not much of value for people to find, right? If you have 2 billion people who are convinced that there's something of value on Calibra, look out, right? And so ultimately the right way to do this is no different from Bitcoin, which is don't store your keys online, right? And so, but Facebook can't do that. I'm 100% sure of that. They've basically told me that, all right? And so that means that if the system is successful, ironically, the only way it's going to work is for other companies to provide wallets that get the money offline. And so we'll see how that evolves. But I think they have a massive security challenge in front of them from several perspectives coming into this.
Yeah, and to add on that, some of the proposals I've seen for the wallet storage, quote unquote keyless storage, which in a way is using in some cases your basically face, right, as which essentially becomes a private key, biometrics. That gets into a scary situation in the future.
Yep.
Because all I have to do at that point is, hold somebody at gunpoint and hold their phone in front of their face and take their money, or put their thumb down.
Right. In modern cryptographic messaging, there's no such thing as keyless storage. There's mnemonics for keys. And the question is, how safe are those mnemonics, right? And how private can I keep them? And so it's an enormous challenge. And I don't envy the fact that you've got to go to an army of lawyers, right, to get approval for every small change that you're going to want to make when it comes to managing effectively customer funds. And that's why startups in this space have an advantage, and why Bitcoin was able to evolve in a much more realistic way, or is evolving in a much more realistic way, because startups can do things that the army of Facebook people can't. There are way more lawyers working at Facebook than I have employees at Abra. And that in of itself should tell you something.
GP, do you want to add anything here?
No, not really. I think that everything has been said on Calibra, and the fact that it will be attacked from day one, probably destroyed too. I agree with you, Bill, that this is going to be interesting, but they still have the army to deal with it as much as they have the army of lawyers. So that will be interesting to see if they can tackle this challenge better than it was tackled with Ethereum at first. But point is, I think that the security will also be on where do they store the key. And as there's a permission server, they're going to have the chance to enhance the security very, very, very much greatly in their own infrastructure. But I don't think that this can ever top the creativity of humans beings. So there's going to be a single person out there that's going to crack it, and it's going to be, there's glorious day. So no, nothing to add there.
One of the points that I would like to bring it up is the problem about trust. I mean, do we trust Facebook?
I don't.
I don't either.
I think that, when you try to figure out the element of trust, it is trust in comparison with what? And I'm reminded of a time where a technologically very dissimilar solution, but on the basis of trust, a very similar solution called PayPal first made its appearance. The fact is that in the early days, not too many people had heard of PayPal. It had not yet become very popular. And the fact that it was a foreign entity for most of the world, and they were a stored value entity, unlike what they became in some territories, did not stop people from adopting it, because the case for being able to receive and make payments just with an email address was just so strong. So I think that if the case or the use case or the desire for participants is just so high, sometimes they may look the other way. For instance, the social network called Facebook, though I agree it's not the same as, as it doesn't store money, but people still use it despite knowing what are the privacy issues with it, because they still derive some value. Likewise, if people could feel that, I can make payments and receive payments in a far more seamless way than even the likes of PayPal offer me, especially in countries which have phenomenal capital controls and people really can't transact cross-border, people may be willing to look the other way and go with the innocent until proven guilty approach and just trust Facebook.
But Ajit, on this panel we have, Jared, Bill, and also GP. They're all working on projects globally, but mainly not specifically in India. If you would have to say to them how India could embrace those projects, how they should be moving, what are the things that can be cracked in order to get India to unlock the Indian market, which is quite mysterious and quite challenging.
So I'm glad that you think that I'm the expert, primarily because I have run a cryptocurrency exchange in India. But I must tell you that in September last year, we actually seized our Indian operations because we ourselves are banging our heads against the regulatory wall. So the regulatory aspect at present has become a non-starter in India. Having said that, the people's movement, because ultimately Bitcoin / cryptocurrency is people's money. Facebook will try to project Libra as people's money. I know they will. So the people's movement continues to be strong. We had 3 million users, and overall there were at least 5 million Indian users who possessed cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically, at some point or time or another. So to directly answer your question, I think any of the projects that are represented on this panel or otherwise, people in the developing world have certain unique problems. And I think they may not have the luxury of having some other problems, such as while privacy is a huge issue on messengers, online platforms, social media, I hear much less about privacy in a country like India than I hear in the Western or the more developed world. And I think that what that goes to tell you is that while a lot of facilities in the financial system may be available to almost everybody in the developed world, in India, even the ability to receive payments and make payments probably is an extremely strenuous as well as extremely expensive process. So we have, I don't know the exact percent, but a very significant part of the population, probably 30 to 35%, who don't have electricity. So where are they going to charge their mobile devices at? People have found solutions to use mobile devices even when there are no electricity. But I think that everybody who's trying to access deep into large countries such as India, China, parts of Africa, etc., maybe even parts of South America, I think has to understand that they are dealing with a very different animal. Somebody who is not trying to improve what they have because they don't have it to begin with, who's trying to get it for the first time. And that is where the likes of WhatsApp, the likes of PayPal made such great inroads into India so fast. And I think that's what's going to happen to cryptocurrency projects also.
Okay, thank you. Jared, I mean, you run you run DigiByte, you know, cryptocurrency that is aiming for mass adoption. Have you ever been looking at India? Have you been thinking about expanding into that market?
Well, first off, while I help code it and do it, the network runs itself. So there's this misconception out there that I'm the CEO of DigiByte, and that's far from the case. It's a completely decentralized network. We do have users in India. I know that. We have some fantastic community members, just as we do in numerous countries across the world. You know, our goal from day one has been to make DigiByte as decentralized as possible, to where, you know, there is no central group, there is no central figure, there is nobody that, you know, stops it. So we've ran, you know, recent analysis of our network, and we have nodes pretty much in every country on the planet. And that's the beautiful thing, is anybody can participate in it. And, you know, there is no, you know, central form of control or central point to target to cease network operations. Prime example, later this evening, we're about to activate a soft fork that's replacing one of our mining algorithms. That process has taken us almost 12 months now, you know, from development to release. And we didn't even know if we were going to make it, just because there was hundreds of pools and services that we had to contact. And we just barely, as of this last week, got, you know, 70% to agree for the change. And there were several people involved in that. So, you know, absolutely, we want people in India, as well as other countries, you know, to use our blockchain. So.
Okay. On the crypto exchanges, Ajit, you have been running a big crypto exchanges in India. How did you select the project?
So this has been, and I'm now only speaking of ZPay, not about all cryptocurrency exchanges in India, because people are taking different approaches. Now, how do you differentiate between a utility token, payment token, security token, and the like is a problematic decision. Are stable coins, which are actually a replacement of some other fiat currency, okay to list, or do we become a foreign exchange or a foreign currency exchange? We have taken a very conservative approach. So at this point of time, in the exchanges that we run, we basically run, you know, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Litecoin, and just one or two more, primarily because the lack of understanding or unanimity across regulators and legislators around the world as to what constitutes something that can be listed on exchanges such as ours. Of course, somebody could say that you can't list anything, as in any exchange of cryptocurrency is itself not allowed by law. But what we do is we take a very conservative approach. We approach the people, such as, for instance, if I were to consider listing DigiByte, I would talk to Jared and other people, find out what their interaction with regulators has been. Sometimes project owners come to me and share with me no action letters from Switzerland and FinTrack and Austrac or whatever, as in variety of regulators, AML, security regulators, AML regulators, etc. So those are some of the factors we use. And while being a cryptocurrency exchange makes us look like we are not a conservative company by the very act of what we do, but within that space, we think of ourselves as relatively more conservative players and shy away from listing most digital assets unless we feel confident about them.
Okay. Bill, one of the points that I've been discussing with Jared, I was a long time ago, but it's still one of the major things in the crypto world is about education. Obviously, you running Abra. Do you see this problem of education to get mass adoption of cryptocurrency, and how yourself and Abra are handling that?
Yeah, I think that I kind of see three perspectives on education, right? We get users today primarily in three ways. So let me break that down. We get people who are completely new to Bitcoin and crypto, and we've brought literally hundreds of thousands of people into Bitcoin for the first time. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of is that we do a massive amount of content marketing. I've interviewed people who are on this podcast about crypto. We publish those. It doesn't make money for us. It's purely educational. There's a big component to Abra, which is just user education. We also get a lot of users who are kind of, let's call them Gen 1.5 crypto users who used to keep their crypto on an exchange and realize that that's a bad idea. Either because they've been hacked, they know somebody who's been hacked, they've been convinced that it's hackable, whatever. And so they come to Abra because they know that they can control their keys for their Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash, and then get smart contract based exposure to the other stuff. And then the third is people who are interested in this but don't really get it yet, think there's something there, and that's where we just have to continually interface with people via this content program that I talked about. And it's scary to a lot of people, right? And getting people over the hump of that first transaction. And to be honest with you, it's no different. I just came back from 2.5 weeks in Asia. It's no different whether you're in Manila, Seoul, Tokyo, or LA. People have the same fears, right? Because if you're putting $100 in crypto in Southeast Asia and that's 5% of your income, and you're putting 10,000 and that's a huge chunk of your income, it's just as scary on a percentage basis. You're thinking exactly the same way. I can't afford to lose all of my money. So you have to convince people to make very small investments to get started, and get very comfortable with how this works, how you back up your key, and what it means to have agency over your money. And you have to go step by step. And I don't think the challenge isn't that different globally. And so this is something that I think is evolving, right? Because when I started Abra, there was a couple of million wallets, and now there's millions, like tens of millions globally. And so it's evolving quickly, but we have a lot of tailwind towards a lot of overhead room to grow on this planet. We don't even have 1% of the population into cryptocurrencies yet. And so, we've just scratched the surface of what the educational process is going to take. I think it needs to evolve to the point where kids are being taught about having agency over their money and the way money really works. It's incredible I wasn't taught about how money works at school. I had to figure it out for myself over time. And that's really sad. People aren't, even the basics of what compound interest works. Most people don't understand it, even adults. And so it's a big challenge to get people over the hump. Most people have no idea what currency inflation is. None. They hear the word inflation, which is the price inflation, which is different, and they just don't have a clue. And so the educational challenge here is just massive.
I think
Stefania?
I think this is the point. You are not thought about, but it's more about when you have to do things, and also relationship with other people. So on that point, I wanted to bring in the community element, which maybe Jared, you can comment, and how important is the community to. But also to develop this educational project. I mean, we see that with DigiByte has got a really strong community worldwide, and there is lots of education that goes just through these community channels.
Yeah, I think there's a very interesting phenomena that's been occurring in the cryptocurrency space that has been tremendously overlooked. And that is, I never thought on a daily basis, like when I woke up this morning, I've already interacted with somebody in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, London, now, all of you. Like, it's amazing how this technology has brought people together with shared idea and shared vision from all over the world. And I think it's been a very powerful unifying force where this technology it's attracted the best and brightest minds on the planet. And on the downside, it's also attracted some of the worst. So, it really is a pivotal technology that's a unifying force. I think all over the world, you see a lot of the same problems. And, it's just like Bill was saying, I myself had to teach myself everything I know about the way money and the monetary system works. And in reality, it's been used as a form of control over the population, for the last, probably a few thousand years. And so there's a lot of reasons why, they didn't really want to teach that stuff in school. So, because you've had this unifying movement, you've had these communities pop up. And, I like the term, crypto tribalism. I mean, it's a real thing. Everybody kind of gets their specific project they get behind and they rally behind it. And, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think there needs to be multiple blockchains. With DigiByte, we've pioneered stuff that's now used in Ethereum. It's used in Bitcoin Cash. Other projects have taken some of our code, just like we've used code from other projects, because everybody's out there experimenting, everybody's out there developing. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think, and I hope we're going to work to this world where there are multiple blockchains, but, I believe in interoperability as being a very interesting unifying force in the future. But yeah, community at the end of the day is everything. And that's what keeps it running, and that's what keeps it going. At the end of the day, it's people.
GP, you run a company, you crypto networks that build up blockchain, and the main focus, if I'm not wrong, is to make blockchain profitable. Do you think that is a challenge? There are so many projects outside there, but how many are profitable actually, are bringing money back? I think this is is quite important to move forward as well.
Well, I think that there might be a misconception about profitable. The point is, we want to participate in what I foresee as being the adoption phase. I think that the very reason we are speaking today with Libra is just another symptoms of this new massive adoption that is coming. Since we just quit the time where people like Jared and the DigiByte and other have created 2.0 and 3.0 version of blockchain. Everyone wanted to make the protocol better because it still needs to scale. But we are at this point where blockchain, because it's not about cryptocurrency always, a blockchain and tokenization in general is entering every market, everywhere. Slowly, a lot of even agencies and government already use blockchain, private sometime, public sometime, and they don't mention it that much. Even in Canada, we have project here using a permission-based blockchain to communicate between banks and documents. So and that has been here for years. We are in this new phase where corporate structure and all the market wants to integrate this blockchain. So ZU Crypto Network is really aiming not at creating new protocol, not at creating more awesome feature in the tech, but more leveraging all that has already been done to help this massive adoption in adopted application that really solves something, a real use case in the world.
Okay, last question. Where would you see the world in 5 years?
Me?
Well, I'm throwing the question to everybody. Let's say in 5 years' time, where do you think we are going to be? Probably we are just kind of the beginning at the moment, but where would we be in 5 years? And how long do you think is going to take before we are going to see a complete shift in this paradigm in the economy and in society?
Well, I think that we are facing something very interesting and dangerous at the same time in China. So with this, I know this is not exactly the subject right now, but the social credit score is a reality that is really coming there. It's a full data play for the government to be able to control the behavior of its population. So I think that within 5 years, China would have figured out how to join this to a smart money in which they'll be able to finalize their ultimate control over their population. So I think that in 5 years, we're going to start seeing government adopting blockchain. As a matter of fact, we're also going to see banks starting to late trying to do their stable coin, which I don't believe that will work that much. And I think that we'll see also big companies such as Google following up with Libra, because once one will have proven that they can do it, everyone will want to do it. So we are at the, I think we're going to see tokenization everywhere, because tokenization is not just about cryptocurrency. It's not just about trading. It's about using a unique digital asset and that can be proven to be trustless between user. And this has various applications.
I'll give you three. It's a multidimensional question, right? But I'll give you three kind of things that are converging at the same time. The first is that I believe the number of world currencies that will be entering a massive currency inflation / hyperinflation state will accelerate. I think there's a 50-50 chance that in 5 years the euro will fail, maybe slightly higher than 50-50, but Germany can also do lots of things to artificially delay and prevent. I think they're going to run out of tricks at some point. But I do think world currencies will continue to fail, and I think we'll see an acceleration of that. I think that Moore's law will continue unabated, and so we have to layer that on top of this discussion. I think that in 5 years, you'll see prevalence of new interfaces, such as AR glasses. I think Apple and Samsung are going to release finally usable, consumable AR glasses in probably the 36 to 48 month timeframe. And at that point, you're going to start to see an evolution away from people staring at the screen. And that will end up with new user interfaces at the point of sale for money transfer, for payments, and how we think about interacting and transacting and messaging. Because remember, at its core, cryptocurrencies are messaging systems. And so there's implications for that on several levels. And the third is I think layer 2 technologies and cryptocurrencies will finally become mainstream or start to become mainstream in 5 years. Such that they're hidden, meaning that you won't know that you're using a Lightning network if you're doing a micro transaction. And I think MSBs and banks will start to use them for cross-border because they're actually cheaper and basically develop their own rails for settlement between layer 2 and the banking system. So all three of those things are going to happen at the same time, or the movement towards the three of those things are going to happen at the same time, in my opinion. And we won't even realize that it's happened by the time it comes. So I think we're accelerating right now in this technology curve, and 5 years is a really interesting time.
So
in my opinion,
our wallet won't be with cash anymore, but will be a digital wallet with a different cryptocurrency.
It is now. I mean, that's what Abra does, right? I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of people carrying their keys around with them every day, with a recovery phrase stored offline. So in 5 years, at the rate we're growing, that hundreds of thousands, I apologize for the noise, the hundreds of thousands should evolve into millions. And so I foresee a model where the investment wallet and the peer-to-peer movement wallet for payments will be the same app. You'll be able to get credit, do peer-to-peer payments, pay your bills, and a lot of that for the micro transactions at the store will be based on layer 2 technologies, which in the back end will integrate with the banking system. And people won't know that they're using this Lightning or whatever that means. It's technology mumbo jumbo that people don't want to understand. And we're not that far from 5 years is not that far out, right? I mean, remember the kind of consumerization of the internet started in more or less in 93 and took 25 years. And so we're 10 years into a 25-year process for the consumerization of public-private key cryptography for both messaging and payments. That's not a big deal for it to take 25 years in the grand scheme of things.
And the secret of scalability for crypto wallets, what is it?
It's a payment stack, right? So when we think about, we conflate money and banking and payments, and they're different parts of the stack. And whether it's cryptocurrencies or government printed money or gold, all three layers of the stack exist. Where does the money come from? How is its creation controlled? Or is it controlled? Is there a print button or not in the case of Bitcoin? How is it stored? How is it moved around in large quantities? And that's kind of, or how is lending controlled? And how does that relate to the creation of the supply? And that's kind of banking. And then the third layer is payments. And whether you're talking about banking in the government sense or money in the government sense, or banking or money in the crypto sense, there is going to be some analogous three-layered stack model that will evolve. And I think that model will evolve in crypto to the point where we have mining, we have banking, which is probably going to be non-custodial for a large part of the planet that doesn't even have IDs. And then we're going to have payment solutions, which are going to use things like second layer and third layer solutions that don't require us to go back to that kind of mining layer to do small transactions.
And this is what you are working on at the moment with Abra.
Yeah, we're in the very early days of that, where we're really focused on, the investment aspect of this and being able to get people into crypto in the first place that actually know what crypto is. But I believe Abra will evolve over 5 years to be using crypto for a lot of users who don't even know they're using it. And that was the original vision of being able to do large-scale global money transfers, via Abra to replace remittances, which right now isn't necessarily realistic, but I think will become realistic over the next 5 years.
I think that's a very interesting point you said, being able to use technology without feeling that you have to kind of learn and become a technician. I think that's really, really important.
To make the point about 25 years, and I'm sorry to monopolize, I'll stop after this, but in 1993, you had to install a TCP/IP stack software onto a Windows 3.11 PC in order to use the internet. Now, I don't even know if all of you understood what I just said, but the consumer had to understand that in 1993 in order to get on the internet, whatever that means. And so clearly we've evolved way past that, where you can literally just type in a password the first time you boot up a laptop and get on the internet. And so that's happened, that evolution happened very quickly to the point where it had to be a self-contained, user-friendly thing. And the same thing will happen in this public-private key-based cryptographic messaging world that we're now moving towards.
Jared?
Yeah, so, I've spent the last 12 months working on a book that we call Blockchain 2035, the digital DNA of Internet 3.0. And basically the whole point is how blockchain, everything in the book is how blockchain is going to be interwoven into different aspects of our life across the board by the year 2035. And we talk a lot about the geopolitical ramifications of blockchain technology that we're already starting to see crack the surface. And I believe the next 5 years, it's going to be a very turbulent period where there's rapid innovation, as Bill mentioned. But we're heading towards a multipolar, fragmented world. And I believe a large part of that is actually going to be underpinned by the advancement and the disruption of blockchain technology in the financial area. And I also believe there was a really interesting book that came out last year called Dawn of the Code War. And I believe, and we go into this, and we actually, my co-author and I recently gave a talk at the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C., where we basically said, we believe blockchain technology is going to be weaponized by nation states. And it probably already has been and is being. And I believe you're going to see more of that. And I think you're also, I don't want to go into greater detail because I know we're trying to give everybody a turn here, but you are seeing this technology, be, considered one of the most serious innovations that a nation state needs to pay attention to. And some countries have actually made it a top priority in national security. So it's going to be an interesting time, but I think at the end of the day, humanity is going to be better for it.
Ajit, what's your forecast?
So even without the challenge of cryptocurrency, I think the US dollar was losing its dominance, and that's only going to get accelerated with the coming of digital assets and cryptocurrencies. Having said that, I don't see fiat disappearing in a 5-year time frame. I don't even see the use of cash, that is paper money, reducing significantly, because that does come with a certain element of privacy and non-traceability that people still continue to enjoy. However, I have been waiting for at least 2 years now to see the inflection point where not just are we accelerating in terms of usage and new people coming into the crypto sphere, but very rapidly accelerate, as in the J curve and the accelerate, the inflection point. I am confident that given a 5-year time frame, that's definitely going to happen. The model on which we work on ZPay fundamentally is getting people on ramp, wherein they bring in fiat currency and convert it to digital assets. I don't see a very long life to that model, especially when a lot of people do move into digital assets and fundamentally transact in digital assets. So I do see that the exchange model as it exists now, and I'm heading an exchange, will either evolve and morph significantly, or will actually die down in many cases as exchanges have to shut shop or get acquired or merge or otherwise change the way they operate. Fundamentally because fiat currency will continue to remain in the format of a stable coin or in the format of a centrally issued currency, will continue to remain the domain of the central regulator. But digital assets will find windows to break free, while the regulatory imperative is getting to be very significant, with regulators having knee-jerk reactions and sometimes overshooting the entire idea of regulation. But at the same time, I see a lot of green shoots around where I find that countries are taking a very enabling and positive view on cryptocurrency as well. So when some of those territories actually jump on and have like 25 to 50% of their population onto the blockchain-based digital assets, the advantage that that populace faces compared to the older model of money, centrally controlled money, will become obvious, and soon everybody will have to follow suit. I think a lot of this will happen in the next 5 years.
So we will see the inflation point.
So the inflection point I was hoping was 2019, but now that we have crossed the midpoint, I'm not so confident anymore. I now say 2020, but since you gave me the luxury of saying what happens in 5 years, I can say with a nearly 100% certainty that it's going to happen within 5 years. I hope it happens as soon as the later part of 2020.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, you mentioned about digital assets, which I know Jared has got lots to say about that, because they have been Digibyte has been doing lots of work into digital assets. But maybe we can leave that for the next time. I would like to thank you everybody for being on the show today, and really thank you so much for sharing your views on Libra and also on where blockchain is going to go.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.